Welcome back to the Empowerment Hour. This is your host, John Harmon, founder, CEO, and president of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, inviting you to tune in every Monday evening, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9:20 a.m. and 920thejersey.com. The broadcast is sponsored by Wells Fargo and Horizon Blue Cross and Blue Shield. There's a number of things going on at the Chamber, and I would encourage you to go to our website at AACCNJ.com or 609-571-1620. So let's go to our next guest. We have two distinguished individuals here in the studio, Dr. Sharon Biggs and Mr. Terence Biggs. He's the president and founder. She's the executive vice president, organizational educational leader. They have a book that's fresh off the press, and there's a number of things we're going to discuss, but the DNA of Gutsy Leaders. If you don't have the kahunas, stay on the couch. So, always ladies first. Dr. Biggs, tell our listeners a little bit about where you're from and just a little bit about you, school-wise. Come from a big family, small family. Then I'll let Terence say a few words, and then we'll get into the meat and the potatoes. How about that?
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having us on.
My pleasure.
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York
okay.
during the Civil Rights Movement.
Keep hope alive.
And there we go. And I was raised in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, which is a low-income community.
It's not the same today.
No, it is not the same today. It is now a sought-after community for young professionals and middle-class families. Mm-hmm. I'm the second youngest of 7 children. In our family, there were 4 boys and 3 girls.
Okay.
And I went to Erasmus Hall High School where I met my sweetheart.
My man. You're looking good, too. It's a good-looking couple in the studio.
I did my undergraduate at Hunter College, part of CUNY, my graduate work here in New Jersey at the College of New Jersey, and my doctoral work at Seton Hall University.
Well, you've done well on both sides of the Hudson.
Thank you.
Mr. Biggs?
Well, I was born in Central America, in Panama.
Okay.
And I immigrated to the United States. And as my wife said, going through the school system, we met in high school. So we have that high school connection.
Good.
And I come from a small family. It's myself and 2 sisters. And glad to be here. Glad to have you.
Thank you both for coming. And I'm from a family of 7, so I can relate to that.
How about that?
5 guys and 2 girls. I was number 6.
Okay.
So they had to think about bringing me here, but I'm here now. I'm telling you, I made the cut.
We're here.
Yes. So you went to 3 educational institutions, one here in Mercer County. But what are some of the other things you did professionally before you became such a distinguished author here?
Okay. So after graduating from undergrad, I worked in corporate financial public relations in New York. And then I switched to a career in educational leadership. So I've been a teacher leader. I've been an assistant principal, worked at the district and state level. I'm currently working at the state level here in New Jersey.
Okay.
And actually finishing up 31 years in educational leadership.
Wow.
And about to hit my retirement button.
Well, don't touch that dial. Gotta make sure we got some paper in the vault. Because these boys here, I don't know. Well, this book is going to be successful, so maybe we're going to be good on that side. So, and you, Mr. Biggs, and professionally?
Well, after I graduated, I attended Medgar College, part of the CUNY system in New York. I then went straight to Wall Street, spent 18 years on Wall Street, and pursued my passion, which was finance.
Okay.
After that, I dabbled with, my own business. I owned a clothing store for 11 years. We did custom clothing.
Okay.
And after that, we delved into the digital marketing aspect of business, seeing an angle where small businesses were struggling in an area that I thought was really going to be an advantage for small business, to be able to finally compete at a level that
it's a level playing field.
It is.
Absolutely.
But I think, unfortunately, a lot of small business owners have kind of had put their head in the sand when it came to digital media, so it kind of just basically went over them. So we decided to take that upon ourselves to sit down with them and try to work with them where they could sub it out to us. And if they had staff on board we could train, we would come in and also do that.
Well, I think that's a good segue into the book, The DNA of Gutsy Leaders. And, you talk about, you kind of alluded to the fact that folks are tapped into a potentially successful marketplace, but they don't realize their fullest potential for a number of reasons, but some of them lack the courage, the intestinal fortitude to press on, notwithstanding. And I often say, if you've tested your business plan over and over, and the metrics tell you that it should hit certain benchmarks, you got to go for it.
Right.
So let's talk to a little bit about the origin. Why did you write this book, and what are you trying to achieve through those who read it, or accomplish through the book?
Well, we originally wrote it because we wanted to fill a niche that we thought was a void in leadership books. It was a portion that we didn't think had been covered. Being wired with the guts to lead. There were already a lot of technical leadership books out there. But we wanted to write a book that would highlight modern day leaders, people just like you and me, and just people who had the guts to go into organizations that maybe had systems issues, and they weren't afraid to ask the right questions and really serve as what we call change agents. So we really had that in mind. We wanted also people to know that leaders, they make mistakes. And what they do when they make mistakes is that they move forward from those mistakes. Gotcha.
Well, I noticed, in little time I spent reading the book, I can't say I went cover to cover, but there was some, Pastor Darius Daniels from Kingdom, he talked about being kind of a young guy, and I know him from this community, coming on the scene and probably as the largest church in the region, but being naive and acknowledging some of those shortcomings. And talk about that, some of those attributes of, when you talk about DNA of Gutsy Leadership, let's get right into the meat and potatoes of what that is and how is it recognized, if you will, in people.
Sure.
My wife and I had sat and watched the movie Black Hawk Down. And when it ended, we, as we normally do, got involved in this deep dialogue about the hidden messages of that movie. And one of the things that was profound about that movie was that in spite of the obstacles that they faced, in spite of real bullets flying over their heads, in spite of all the dangerous situations that these leaders found themselves in, you had folk who were in charge of certain troops, certain commands, that they had to man and lead in the midst of what was totally chaos. Normally when we talk about chaos, we're talking about chaos from an organizational standpoint, as my wife said, systems failures. But we're looking at leaders that they've got to have the guts to get up in the morning and lead a troop from point A to point B, knowing they're going to lose some of those members.
Right.
And that's a totally different type of leadership.
The mindset is totally different.
Totally different.
Absolutely.
Totally different. So we just got engaged in this dialogue, and that was really the nucleus for the DNA of Gutsy Leaders, because what we concluded ended up becoming our subtitle, which is I'm made for this moment.
Right.
And those guys knew they were made for that moment. They were trained for it. They knew they could do the job.
As you were talking, I kind of, my mind went back to conversations that I've had about, let's say, some ex-offenders who may have been unlicensed pharmacists and then ultimately got sent on a vacation and they came back home and then got matriculated and got some education. I often say that those individuals possess the leadership skills, the courage. Some of them have logistics, distributions, ability to manage people and accomplish a goal in an environment that has some severe consequences. Is that kind of what you're alluding to? Not necessarily those personalities, but what it takes really to persevere, notwithstanding what's before you. If you set the mark, you got to get it done, right? Notwithstanding.
Absolutely. And one of the things we found out, too, when we did the book was that industry doesn't matter. Because these individuals who are gutsy, they look like the perfect fit for what they're doing. And they're those forward thinkers, but they're also forward doers.
Gotcha.
They're fearless and bold and authentic and data-driven. So they really do take into account what the data sets are telling them, and then they act on the data.
So the numbers don't lie, but people lie to the numbers.
There we go.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's another saying I use that winners are losers that don't quit, and a loser is a winner that quits. And I got that from a buddy of mine. But there's another theme in the book, guard the trust of others. So the culture, be strong, courageous, and decisive.
Yeah.
These are. How did you guys come up with those kind of attributes, and how did you select the people that you kind of chronicled in the book?
Well, we went through a list of folk that stood out as gutsy leaders to us. One of the things we found out is as we went through the interview process with each of them, they had no idea. They were saying, well, I had no idea I was a gutsy leader. So one of the things that we took away from the interviews was that humility was definitely a trait that stood out.
Yes.
Wow.
They were not individuals that would be called in to do something substantial and then sit around and wait for the press conference.
Gotcha.
They would be off to the next fire, putting that out while somebody else took the credit. And it was just phenomenal because interview after interview, that kept coming up.
Right.
Folk were saying, well, why are you interested in what I did? Now, we had a gentleman from out of Monmouth that during Hurricane Sandy, they literally took over that entire community to consolidate and feed people and did the whole distribution process. And at one point, he was leading a volunteer force of about 500 people. So people in that community were eating and being clothed by this individual's ability in the middle of what we considered a catastrophe to step up and lead. And it was just powerful because as we interviewed him, we're like, this is what you did. So many folk were the beneficiary of your gutsiness. And he was like, I don't see what the big deal is. And it really was profound to us because it kind of took him out of it as long as there was no longer a challenge to solve.
So it's somewhat of an innate ability. That's what it kind of the DNA piece comes from. Is there some spirituality to this because you talk about humility and God says he'll exalt those that are humble?
Yeah, I think we can consider them spiritual leaders as well.
Gotcha.
And it's so interesting, as my husband said, that the gutsy leaders we interviewed, they're some of the most humble people around. And they really don't see themselves as gutsy. They just see themselves doing what needs to be done to help people succeed.
We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back. I think this is a great discussion. We're talking about the DNA of Gutsy Leaders here on the Empowerment Hour with our guest, Dr. Sharon Biggs, and her husband, Terence Biggs. Stay tuned for more. We'll be back in a minute here on the Empowerment Hour.
Get over here and give your Uncle Mike a hug.
Hey, Uncle Mike.
Why is it that I only see you at birthday parties and reunions? Hey, your mother told me you quit your job to start your own company.
That's right. See, I built this app.
Oh, so it's more like a hobby.
Not a hobby. It's actually doing really well.
Is that your app?
Nah, it's my bank. They noticed unusual activity on my debit card.
Oh, that's not good. Happened to me once. Huge headache.
Not with Wells Fargo. I can respond right now via text. Then they'll call me and help me get things back on track. Oh, plus, I can swing by my bank and get a temporary card issued right away. Oh, And that's Wells Fargo calling to follow up.
You got a good head on your shoulder, son. How about I put a word in for you at the shop?
Nope, not necessary. My company's doing fine.
Don't mention it. Oh, hey, Lawrence, get over here and give your Uncle Mike a hug.
At Wells Fargo, when we notice unusual debit card activity, we can alert you and help you handle it so you can keep your life moving forward. Suspicious card activity alerts. Security, convenience, together. Wells Fargo. Together we'll go far. Wells Fargo Bank N.A., member FDIC.
Yeah, just make sure you keep the mic close. Welcome back to the Empowerment Hour. And, we have two dynamic authors here, co-authors, a team effort, a husband and wife team, kind of a unique combination of putting the different skill sets together to come out with a very impactful project, if you will. So back to you, Dr. Biggs. In terms of the process, in terms of creating this masterpiece, walk our listeners through that, and then some of the benefits that can be derived from.
Sure. I'll start, and then I'm sure my husband's going to jump in a little bit. So we were really strategic about the format. And we planned and scheduled having focused conversations with each other because we use Google Calendar for our family. Mm-hmm. So we would put our conversations on the calendar. And every time we had a conversation about the project, we would set goals before the end of the conversation for what we were going to do next. And we agreed that even though we were being strategic and very professional about it, that we were going to keep the process fun and make it a family affair. So we had our grown son serve as the graphic designer. Our grown daughter helped out with some of the editing. And we had conversational meetings with each other for a solid 2 months before the first interview.
So this is a real, a village project, if you will.
Absolutely it is.
Wow, okay.
I enjoyed the interaction between us as families because, as you know, we all have our passion. Mm-hmm. So it was amazing listening to some of the conversations between my wife and my son, who does graphic design. Mm-hmm. And, we're very specific about what we wanted. But he was very specific about what he wanted to debut.
I hear you. Everybody has some skin in the game, right?
Yes, but he always deferred to Mom. So
I tell you, Mom, at the end of the day, that's where the rubber meets the road.
That's right.
Yes, okay. So I guess the next area was the benefits, right?
Yeah, sure. So you were asking during the break who benefits from reading this book. And literally everybody. Okay. Everybody who leads someone or something, which is all of us, because we all lead in one way or another. And that's one of the things that comes out when people read the book, too. They say, I never thought of myself even as a leader. But in reading these narratives from these modern day people, I now see that I'm leading something as well. So we think that whether you're leading a family, a team, a business, a medical practice, a religious institution, whatever it is, this book will benefit you. So
in terms of, before we get to some of the takeaways, in terms of looking at those who were kind of featured in the book, they came from different backgrounds, but were there some common attributes that you might want to talk about from the different leaders?
Well, like we said, we talked about the humility, but one of the things that stood out also was their ability to move in the midst of being fearful. Mm-hmm. Wow. Fear normally anesthetizes most people. What we found with gutsy individuals is that fear propels them. Wow. At the John Maxwell, we have a saying that says, jump and build your wings on the way down. And it's something that I think gutsy leaders tend to have. It's that I'm made for this. I don't feel like it, but I don't move based on how I feel. I move based on my experience and my preparation. Those were profound lessons that we got from these phenomenal folk that we had a chance to sit down and talk to.
But going back to what we said earlier, if the definition of success is preparation, meeting opportunity. If you've tested, just practice and train, when the opportunity comes, sometimes you don't know how you're going to react to it. But deep down inside, you're supposed to be ready for the task at hand. And I can remember Carla Harris. she's a big executive over at Morgan Stanley, and she said, "You can duck and still get shot."
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so some folks are fearful of being taken out, but you could be hiding behind a blockade, if you will, and still be a casualty. So some of the takeaways.
So one main takeaway is that this book, The DNA of Gutsy Leaders, is for people who really are serious about getting better at what they do, whatever that is. Another one is that it's a constant reminder that, as you're saying, that when those moments come, whether they're big or small, we need to be ready to seize those opportunities and just move forward and act in it. Some people would say, build your brand first and then act on your leadership opportunity. We say the opposite. We say act on your leadership opportunity and build your brand while you're doing that.
Right. No, I agree, because sometimes the brand could evolve out of awareness, right?
Absolutely.
And that you can put obstacles in your own way by just overthinking some things or doubting yourself. The Bible has a number of references. Moses made excuses about his ability to articulate.
Absolutely.
And David, when he came up against Goliath, he could have just been intimidated by what was before him, but nonetheless, he was told to get the job done.
Get it done.
And he got it done. How was it, working together as a team? You talk about your kids being involved, but the two of you, how do you know when to hold and when to fold them on an issue?
and they both look my way. So.
I'll let you go first.
or when to run.
Take cover, right? It was a unique opportunity. Our careers have taken us in different paths.
Yes.
And for some reason, we see that the Lord saw fit to bring us back together, and this was the Coming Together project. So, as a man, I had my concerns because I've known folk who've worked with their spouse and just hasn't worked out. So you're thinking about all that, but then you just kind of look at what you bring to the table and what this individual brings to the table. And as my wife said, we made this project fun.
Yes, we did.
We didn't want this to be something where we were just gnawing at each other. It had to be something that was birthed out of that good place inside of each of us.
Gotcha.
So I think I got a chance to see. And I would encourage most husbands, if you can, to try and get this glimpse. A lot of times we're married to someone for years, but you never really get a chance to see them operate under their professional mantle.
Yes.
And I got a chance to see that. I got a chance to see the response, how other people were responding to her as Dr. Biggs, the professional, not Terry Biggs' wife.
Gotcha.
And it was just a powerful takeaway.
Wow.
Right.
Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I would have to echo what my husband
Sounds
said.
real good.
It was amazingly rewarding because it not only gave us opportunities to sit together and communicate as husband and wife, but as Terence said, it gave us a chance to see each other flow professionally and to really understand deeply why there's so much respect in the professional world for what we both do.
That's just complimenting each other, and that's the team, right?
Yes, it is.
Knowing which area that you bring more value, and vice versa, because at the end of the day, you have set some goals, and you got to get it done.
Yeah.
You got to practice what you preach.
That's right.
So, with that said, maintaining the balance. To speak to that, your thoughts about how do you maintain the balance? Work, professional. This project, you both overcame some health issues.
Yes, we did.
But you both look beautiful tonight.
Thank you.
Strong, vibrant.
We feel good.
So let's, how did you deal with all those headwinds and still move forward on your project?
Yeah, work-life balance is crucial to us, and we tell people all the time, make sure you maintain it, because we all have 24 hours a day. That's it, a total of 24. And we believe very strongly family comes first within that 24-hour period. So we do everything possible to cultivate what we are as a family, because we get one family, but we can change work from season to season. So the work will be there. Our family, we have to make sure we're taking care of. Second, I would also say, make sure that if you are a husband and wife working together, that you communicate with each other how you want to meet your demands of the project that you're working on. So like I said earlier, we use Google Calendar, whatever it is, so that if we don't get a chance to physically sit together in the room, we can look at the calendar and find out what the story is. And when a person's in mission mode, we get a better understanding about why that is. They're not mad at you. It's just that they're in work mission mode.
Gotcha.
And then third, take some time every day to personally retool and refuel yourself. I call it my lunch namaste time.
Okay.
That's my quiet time where I just get to meditate, reflect, to think, so that when I'm out in public again, I'm my best self.
It's amazing what you can do when you just let yourself do the dump, get all that stuff out of your head and kind of refresh and replenish. It's like the system. You got to let yourself kind of just replenish and refocus, refresh, and let some the revelations come in, if you will.
That's right.
And some of the things you thought you saw, you come back and say, well, I didn't see that, but I saw this. What are your thoughts about that balance, sir?
Well, I would say you don't have to look like what you've been through.
Yes.
And for entrepreneurs and for single mothers and those of us who have to get up every day and strap up and get ready to go and battle, that is just empowering to know that at the end of some of these cycles, I don't have to wear the scars from that previous battle. Balance is critical. We're big on technology. One aspect of the company, like I said, is working with digital marketing. So one of the things I launched was a digital calendar for my family. So, my son's is in Atlanta. We load up that calendar with everything that we're doing so that we know at every point in time where somebody's going to be, what they're working on. Do we need to drop something else to help them out? So it keeps us all on the same page. And then for entrepreneurs that are listening, I would recommend a tool that I use. It's an app called Todoist. It allows you to manage your to-do list. Because sometimes you come up with all these to-do lists, and they are the meat and potatoes of what you know you need to get done. But when you are self-employed, there's usually not too many people there to hold you accountable.
Gotcha.
What I like about this app is that it constantly has reminders saying, you said you were going to do this.
Well, I definitely need to look into that because I'm always saying, John, we're down to about a minute and a half. Okay. Why don't we tell our listeners where they can find this great book? It's available at Amazon.com and CreateSpace.com also. Yep. Okay, and that's important that they know where to find it. There was so many. Any other final thoughts? Any projects that you have? Anything you want to talk about in the last minute? You got the floor. Well, we got such good feedback from the book that we also developed a study guide to accompany it, and that's also on Amazon. Okay. So you got a study guide, you got a book. So listeners, you have no excuse. But the last thing you said, I made a note, kind of establish your own narrative. You know, there's when you're engaging and talking to folks, they have certain perceptions and they can put some negative thoughts out there as you're pursuing your project, but you know what you want to get accomplished. You got a game plan and you've executed it. So no, this is great stuff. We're down to the final countdown. The producer's giving me the take it to the parking lot sign. So I want to thank you all for coming this evening on the Empowered Hour, heard every Monday evening 6 to 7 p.m. and we ask you to be with us next week here on 920 AM and 920thejersey.com. Have a good evening.